Hey friends, how the heck are ya? My name is Jessie if you're new here. Today's video is going to be about my postpartum journey with an unplanned C-section. I have a couple of things I just want to tell you about what happened, and then also like some things I wasn't expecting that got me through my C-section postpartum. So I have it all written down here. So whether you're someone that's had a vaginal birth and is just interested in like what has happened or what can happen with a C-section birth, you're planning a C-section, or you're like me and you went in thinking you're gonna have a vaginal birth and came home with a scar and a lot of pain from an unplanned C-section or an emergency C-section, then hopefully this will be helpful for you. I just feel like there were a lot of things going into postpartum that I was not anticipating and no one told me. And I'm gonna try to tell you what I currently remember. Just as a little disclaimer, it is 2:09. I have a doctor appointment at 3. Thankfully it's virtually. My 3-month-old is sleeping right on the other side of this wall. And I have dirty dishes behind me. You can probably hear the washer and dryer running. It's just one of those days where things are crazy. I did my hair, but not my face. So it's just, it is what it is. But I wanted to get this video done because I just feel like I haven't had the time, and I know that I wish that I could have found a video like this too. So I'm gonna try to run through it quickly. If you're interested in that kind of video, make sure you keep watching. If you're new to my channel, I do all kinds of vlogs, lifestyle videos, and then I talk a lot about personal finance. So I do like a financial budgeting video twice a month to kind of show you guys what that looks like. That's kind of what I do the most on here. But yeah, let's jump into this video. I'm actually going to make myself another coffee. So as I get started on my second coffee for today, I do want to say my C-section I was not anticipating. You can watch my birth vlog if you want to see like everything that happened. Cheers if you are also drinking a coffee to get you through your day. So if you see me looking down at my notes, I'm just trying to remember everything I wanted to talk about today. But basically, if you want to know my entire birth story, I did a birth vlog, but I also did a birth story. The birth story is pretty long, but it's very in-depth. So depending on what part you're interested in, you can like click through on the chapters. So I will link both of those videos in the little eye in the sky thingy for you guys to look at. But I can't even do a quick recap honestly because there's just like a lot. My birth was very traumatic for me. But if we jump to the C-section, I ended up having an unplanned C-section because Ivy, my daughter, was having decelerations in her, is that what they're called? In her heart rate every time they would give me Pitocin. And when they didn't give me Pitocin, she was fine. So they basically decided it's not worth giving Pitocin. So after I had my C-section, basically like the actual surgery, right, they took me out of the room and into this like little bystander triage area. A, I think they do that with everyone, but B, because they didn't have a recovery room open for me, which is annoying because I got charged for that room and for having to stay in that room for 2 hours when it's their own fault that they didn't have a room available. But that's another subject. When I was in the C-section area, I went tachycardic is what they called it. Like my heart rate went up really high, which I will say was one of my biggest fears, was that I was gonna have like heart problems during my birth. I don't know, it's just like where my anxiety went. They pushed a very large clot out of me, which are all things that I was not prepared for, right? When I went into the room, I puked, but they still allowed me to eat right away. I've heard that some people have C-sections and they don't allow you to eat right away. And the other thing that I wasn't anticipating was just, I feel like the nurses like had no information for me as to what to do with the C-section. So like I was asking them and they basically just told me like, you know, try to get up when you feel like you can, eat when you feel like you can. And I was just sitting here like, I've never had a C-section. I have no idea what any of this stuff is. It was just very confusing to me. And now I also will say that I didn't prepare for a C-section birth either. I don't know that like a lot of people do unless they are planning on having one. But I didn't even think about that. I knew there was possibility of induction. I knew there was possibility of, you know, complications with with like a vaginal birth, but I just like didn't plan for a C-section. So everything I brought with me in my hospital bag video, I didn't use any of it. Here are a couple of things that I saw, things I wasn't expecting for my postpartum, and then things that got me through it. First of all, one thing I was not expecting was to bleed as much as I did. I hated it. I don't know about any of you. I hate having my period. I know that they're important. I know that like you shouldn't think of them as gross, but I've just never liked having my period. I don't like feeling dirty and wet and all of that kind of stuff. So I knew I wasn't gonna like the postpartum bleeding. I wasn't anticipating the amount of bleeding. Now, I think that I was an outlier. I don't think everybody bleeds like this, though I did have a couple of women reach out to me saying that they bled really, really bad for a really long time. But I mean, I had very large clots. Like, they tell you to call if you have a golf ball size or bigger, and I did, and I called them, and they basically were like, well, let's just wait on it. So thankfully nothing happened to me, but I had very large clots for well over a week, almost 2 weeks, I think, and very heavy bleeding for over 2 weeks. I didn't stop bleeding until I was like 5.5 weeks postpartum. It did eventually slow down, but I was not anticipating that. I was not anticipating the length and the amount, particularly the amount. Everybody says it's like a heavy period. I don't know what kind of periods people are having, but this was like, I literally multiple times thought that I was like bleeding out. I should probably stop talking about blood because I don't know how much YouTube likes that, but just know that there was a lot and I wasn't anticipating it. Number two, I was not prepared for a C-section. So I had nothing at home. None of my clothes worked. Like I said, for the first week or so, I was basically in a robe or a nightgown, and then pretty much past that I didn't start wearing leggings for a long time. Like, unless I was leaving to go somewhere, I didn't want anything touching that area because it was just sensitive. That was just something that I wasn't prepared for. So I came home from my C-section. Comfy sweatpants that I bought for myself after birth did not feel good on me in particular, and I'm very sensitive to that kind of stuff. So I went on like an Amazon shopping spree. I bought like 2 nightgowns, and I bought like some big shirts to wear at night because you also sweat a lot, which I wasn't anticipating, and that just like helped in general not to have anything touching that area. Number 3, I said I couldn't get into my bed because it was too tall. So this was something that I definitely wasn't anticipating, and thankfully Ben's mom was here because I also wouldn't have been able to help Ben fix the bed. Like, I don't even know how I would have slept. But you basically can't use your abdominal muscles at all, not only from birth, but just from the C-section. And at the hospital, you have like handles to get you in and out of places. I obviously wasn't anticipating a C-section birth, so I didn't have any of that stuff. I didn't have a stool. I know some people get stools or they get like handles for their bed. I didn't do that. We have a pretty high bed, so we took the box spring off of our bed and just laid it in another room. We actually just put it back on our bed like last weekend. And we slept as low to the ground as possible. And there's a lot of videos and stuff that you can watch out there, but basically I would like sit down on my bed and then like turn and put my legs up and then scoot myself back before I would lay down, or I would like lay down on my side, and then there's like, they tell you to do like the log roll to get up. It's very difficult, and sleeping was just hard in general because I could only sleep in certain positions, and then Ivy was waking up in the middle of the night, and I was, you know, anxious because I've never had a baby, so I was waking up to like look at her, but I couldn't get up. So Ben had to do a lot of that for me too. So a lot of pressure on your partner if you have a C-section, for sure. I mean, I know some women do it on their own, and I truly have no idea how, because my experience, I would not have been able to do it on my own. So I'm grateful that I had a supportive husband, because the next thing I talked about, showering being difficult. It was hard. Like, I couldn't even pick up my leg. You guys can't see, but I'm showing you how you pick up your leg to get into like a bath shower, like regular shower. So he had to like help me lift my leg and get in there, and then you don't have like, I didn't have a ton of balance. I couldn't move quickly. If I'd moved quickly or braced, it would hurt really bad. And then the other thing is you have to keep that area dry. So he, thankfully, the only thing that my OB told me that was helpful was to take a hair dryer on the cool setting and dry it that way, like dry your incision. Ben did that for me because I have guessed like the C-section shelf, but it's basically just like I still have fat in my stomach, so my skin hangs over my C-section scar and like some fat hangs over. So there's no like, especially in the beginning, I had to kind of hold that up and Ben would dry it. I can like move everything around now, but at the time it was so sensitive, and also I couldn't feel part of it. So it's very confusing because like they cut through, I think it's like 7 layers of your body to get into the C-section. So they cut through a lot of nerves. I still don't have full feeling in my belly. 5, I said, let people help you. I couldn't hold Ivy very well, which kind of stunted our breastfeeding journey. If you guys have watched any of my videos, I pump, but I only pump about 2-ish ounces per time that I pump, so I don't have enough to feed her. So she is formula / breast milk fed, but the breastfeeding journey just didn't work because I couldn't hold her. For the way that it was on me and for how big of a baby she was, it hurt too much to hold her, and I didn't have like the upper body or core strength to hold on to her in a way to get her in like the zone for breastfeeding. There's a bunch of other reasons that it didn't work either, like she was having trouble latching, I wasn't producing. I'm really glad that like I have a very supportive partner. We were really lucky that he had a good parental leave, so like he was feeding Ivy for me while I was pumping, or he was holding her for me while we were doing stuff. And honestly, the first like week or two, I would say Ben did more than I did because I was just in so much pain. I also wasn't taking the like really strong medication. I was just taking ibuprofen and Tylenol. So definitely be willing to ask for help. We went and saw my chiropractor, who was really helpful. My doula brought us a meal. My hairstylist actually brought us a meal too. And that was all just like really helpful to have that help, which I think in any postpartum experience is helpful, but especially with the C-section, like Ben was exhausted, and he was not only taking care of a baby, he was also taking care of me. It was a lot for him. So let people help you, but also let people help your people. And then also with that, the amount of people that came out of the woodwork that had a C-section or a traumatic birth who reached out to me after I started sharing about it on social media was amazing. Like just the support of other women, people calling me, people texting me to make sure I was okay. I just felt very supported by women who I barely knew or were friends of mine in college, and I haven't talked to them since. It just felt really good to be going through this like kind of scary ride into motherhood, plus also getting over a major surgery that you weren't expecting, plus birth trauma that I had. And it was just really helpful to have people helping me, even if it was just to listen to me vent or whatever, talk about how I was feeling. I'm glad that I kind of posted about how I was feeling on social media because I appreciated the people that reached out to me. So do what works for you. If you have people in your area or you have family that's super supportive, do that. But for me, this was really helpful. Next, I said I wasn't expecting the anxiety and depression that came with birth trauma. Now this is a whole other video, so I'm not going to go into it, and everybody talks about postpartum depression and anxiety, but like my journey, I'm 12 weeks out now, has been like so up and down. Like sometimes I feel good, sometimes I don't. I'm dealing with a lot of anxiety. I get a lot of like fixation, and then I also deal with like doomsday anxiety, meaning I will picture like worst case scenario happening. And postpartum definitely ups that. I was not anticipating it as much as I did. I had directly after birth, I had a lot of scenarios where I was like having panic attacks in bed because I was reliving my birth trauma, which wasn't necessarily just the C-section. There was other stuff that happened. If you watched my birth story, then you know, but like I was kind of dealing with all of that while also dealing with having an unplanned surgery and having a newborn who I like loved to death but could barely hold because I was so exhausted. So there's just a lot that went with it, and I just wasn't anticipating it. And as much as people tell you to prepare, and then you go to the doctor and they have you fill out like a 5-question, like, do you feel sad? Do you feel anxious? I'm like, this isn't helpful, and you could easily lie, but also like, it's just not helpful. Like, but to go with that, there's zero support for women after birth, at least where I gave birth. I had a C-section and I didn't go in until my 6-week appointment. They didn't check on me. When I called them about the excess bleeding, they kind of were like, meh. Like I just felt very unsupported by the medical system that I have here. Thankfully, I have a really good naturopath that I work with out of Chicago, who I talked to in a half an hour. And she tried to help me as much as she could, but even that, you know, there's only so much she could do with the hormones. So I do wish that I had a better medical team than I did, and maybe you will, because I have heard of some people who have C-sections go in for like a post-op 2 weeks afterwards, but that wasn't even an option for us. That's a whole other video, is how terrible the care is for women postpartum. My last thing to talk about is just like my body in general feeling different. So I talked about, I've been having stomach issues if you watch any of my vlogs. Basically since a couple days postpartum, my gut has never been the same. Like, I'm having a lot of stomach issues, a lot of stomach pain, a lot of getting sick to my stomach, those kinds of things that have continued postpartum. I will say that they have relaxed a little bit, but I definitely feel different. I had a really strong gut microbiome before I got pregnant, even during my pregnancy, and it seems like as soon as I gave birth, that all went out the window, and I definitely don't feel great. Another thing that I've noticed for me, which could be C-section, could be postpartum, could be core strength in general with having a big baby, could just be my body, but everything from like here to my C-section scar feel different. For a while you kind of feel empty in your belly, which is weird. I still kind of have that feeling because I have that diastasis recti or whatever, like my core, my ab muscles separated quite a bit. But like my stomach hangs differently on my body, so you know, it feels different now. My hips feel different, my chest feels different, because I think it's like my boobs are bigger, I'm hunched over a lot more, but just in general, not having core strength, I just am having a lot of back pain. I'm having a lot of lower back pain, and then I'm having a lot of like chest heaviness or shortness of breath, things like that, that they just keep attributing to core strength. And yeah, so trying to like build your core strength back up after C-section, after birth, can be easy or hard. For me, it's been a little bit more difficult. I am working with a pelvic floor therapist, and my chiropractor has done a lot of pelvic floor work herself too, so she's been helping me with stuff like that. So I'm hoping that those things will continue to get better, but we'll see how that goes. But I definitely wasn't prepared for that, and then I just wasn't prepared for how different my body would be. Like, I knew, you know, that I had pretty bad stretch marks, which I didn't get until like a couple weeks before she was born, because she was just so big that at the end when she dropped, my body just, the skin was just over it at that point. I have a big skin fold over my incision. And this isn't me like attacking my body. This is just truth that I wasn't prepared for. I have like a lumpy belly because things haven't gone back to the way they were, but also I was probably 40 pounds overweight before I got pregnant. So then I gained 23 pounds in my pregnancy. So there was just a lot. That's totally fine, but I just wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't prepared for my hips to feel different. My back feels different. Some good things like my ankles and my feet, I didn't even realize how swollen they were in my pregnancy, but they're less swollen now. And yeah, it's interesting. Like, My body has changed. A lot of things will never go back and some things might. And I'm not super worried about it at this point. I am kind of doing things to help that along, like working with my naturopath and working with pelvic floor PT, my chiropractor, but I'm also trying to be more active. I just started Weight Watchers. I'm just using it as a way to kind of get myself ahead of this and kind of prepare my body for losing weight. I felt very vulnerable. I felt very unsupported by medical providers, and I felt very outside of my own body, like between sleep deprivation, having a new baby, and a C-section that I wasn't prepared for. Like, it was really hard for me. My anxiety kicked in. I would say I was depressed for a couple weeks as well. I feel like I've moved out of that, and now I'm just sitting pretty hard in anxiety that I am working through. There's just a lot. So I just want to say, if you've made it to the end of this video, if you ever need somebody to like talk through things, reach out to me on Instagram. I am so grateful that I had women reach out to me when I gave birth and try to help me get through the birth trauma, the C-section trauma, just postpartum, becoming a new mom in general. I still am very confused by the fact that I'm a mom. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know it was a little bit rambly, but I hope that you enjoyed it. I need to go turn the air conditioning on because it's really hot in here, and I turned it off so it wouldn't be making a bunch of noise. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.